delighted to have online because we got a guy in Melbourne, Australia, Paul Taylor, resilience coach, like nutritionist, exercise physiologist, neuroscientist, PhD, scholar. And what I love, and he likes to keep this quiet, an ex-boxer, professional boxer. So Paul Taylor, how are you, sir? How's all in sunny Melbourne?
I'm very good, mate. All is good in sunny Melbourne. We now have the title of the most locked down city in the world. So we're in lockdown 6.3. So,
how long?
But mate, there is light at the end of the tunnel. They're easing restrictions in about 2 weeks. So
nice.
It's all good.
Nice. And I heard, and you tell me if this is right or wrong, it's not even contemporary lockdowns. I think in the history of the planet, of human being civilizations, you've done the longest lockdown ever. Even in
longest.
Times of, wow. Look, you're in resilience, Paul.
That's it, exactly. Mate, as we said earlier, a lot of people get very antsy about it, but realistically, our grandparents had to go to war. We just have to not go out so much. It's not that hard.
It is not. And look, you'll miss it. When you get out of lockdown, if it's any consolation, you get out of it, you'll miss it. I'm back at work. I'm literally on my lunch break. I couldn't even get enough time, I'm back to work. So enjoy it. Enjoy being at home. I've seen your Instagram. You've got a swimming pool. You've barbecues. You have a brand line. You stay there.
Man, I can't complain because I got a nice house and we live close to the beach. So, but I am looking forward to getting out and going boogaloo.
Oh yeah, no doubt. But look, a pleasure to have you here with us. As you know, I gave you a bit of context in the emails, and we're an entrepreneurial society. We take ourselves quite seriously as as much as any society could, but we're a big entrepreneurial society, actually the largest society in Europe in this particular field. And
oh wow.
And a lot of, in years gone by, there's been a lot of, we built up a lot of momentum, a lot of effort. I'm quite proud of this society. I've been involved. I've been in this society for 4 years. I've been a student for 3. Go figure. If there's any officials in the meeting, forget about it. But so it's great. And so everybody on this call will be interested in business, enterprise, kind of like outliers. Maybe they're in courses now that might have a stereotypical path, but a lot of them are curious about how do people go their own way. Is there alternatives to following the traditional path? You go to school, you go to university, you get a job, you retire and die. Is there alternatives? And look, I before the guys came on, I was giving a bit of context. I've seen you speak once. I was blown away by it. I'm delighted to have you here now again. And I'm going to try and shut up as much as I can today and get a bit of advice, wisdom, and guidance from Paul Taylor. And Paul, if you want to bring it into entrepreneurial, direction and talk about what you've done in that space, or if there's any advice you would have for college kids, the more we can get out of that, the better. So,
sure.
So Paul, tell us your story. Where did you start, and how did you end up where you are in Melbourne?
Yeah, look, my story's pretty eclectic. It's not a standard one. So I'm ex-British military. So I'm from Northern Ireland, as you may guess. I'm from a mixed marriage. Yes, indeed. And I'm from a mixed marriage, which in Northern Ireland has a different connotation than everywhere else. But so I ended up, I joined the British military because I wanted to do something a bit more exciting. So I ended up flying helicopters for a living. For 8 years. So I hunted submarines, did anti-submarine warfare. Then I did helicopter search and rescue. I did combat survival and resistance to interrogation training, which was all fun. But it's not standard. It's not a standard path to then becoming an entrepreneur. So when I left the military 2004, I had 2 years previously met a young Australian lady in Ecuador when I was backpacking. And I ended up, she dragged me kicking and screaming to Australia, kicking and screaming the whole way.
It was hard.
It was a tough gig. But so I had done a master's degree in ex-phys before I joined. And then I always knew I was going to leave after 8 years. So I did another master's in nutrition because I was pretty passionate about the whole health and well-being. So I did that part-time. So I left and I came to Australia and I set up as a physiologist and nutritionist. And then after a while, I started a registered training organization So it's kind of like TAFE. I don't know what the equivalent is in Ireland, but we ran basically vocational education. So I certified personal trainers and fitness instructors.
Okay.
So that was a big gig, setting up a proper training organization. Then I created that BioAid software, which was used by gyms, which was a great little business. I started doing corporate speaking. I set up my own gym at one stage, and I sold a gym. Then I started an online corporate wellness program, and now I've got another corporate wellness program. So I've done a number of different things. It's a bit of a non-standard path, I would say.
Love that, though. Love that. And the more entrepreneurial you are, the more non-conventional it should be. And like,
well, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, well, I mean, that's it. It's really just about, for me, a lot of people say follow your passion. For me, it's a little bit more succinct than that. For me, it's what are you curious about, right? That's the thing that I think that is the big driver. If you're curious about something, then it doesn't feel like a job. It doesn't feel like a chore, and you're going to really be into it passionately. And then there's the potential for what the Japanese call ikigai, which I'm very, very fortunate to have ikigai. Are you familiar with ikigai at all?
I'm not, I don't think.
So it's this intersection of that which you love, that which you're good at, that which the world needs, and that which you can get paid for, right?
I've seen the Venn diagram. I didn't know what it was
Yes.
called. I've seen the visual, and it's perfect in its simplicity. And if you find that sweet spot in the middle, you obviously did.
Yeah, and if you find that sweet spot in the middle, it's so good for setting yourself up for your whole life, right? And there's not a lot of people who find that and who are fortunate enough. And a lot of people, unfortunately, get, the little lights of the money, and they chase the money, and they're not really passionate about it. And mate, I deal with so many people who have just burnt themselves out because they've been chasing money rather than what they're curious about.
Yeah, and they say that, isn't it? When you do that level of work, or you're that intense work for other people's goals, that's stress. Yeah. Whereas if you're that focused and putting in that energy and your passion, that's something different. That's intrinsic. You don't have to force it. And you wake up in the morning on a journey wanting to go. And I have a client that I was talking to recently and just said the same thing. It's just like, he was searching for that, finding his thing, and that's something that's curious. Does it take proactivity, do you think, or is it something that you wait to stumble upon? That like finding of that area that you're curious to a level to build a career around?
Yeah, sorry, what was the question again? I missed the start of it.
Does that take proactivity? Did you sit down and with conscious effort try to find out the middle of your Venn diagram? Look, when I was in the forces, I decided that afterwards I wanted to do something important. And look, for me, there was a bit of a catalyst where 8 mates of mine got killed in a helicopter crash, and two very good mates of mine, and it was something that didn't need to have happened. But I decided at that point that when I left the military, I was going to do something a bit more worthwhile, because I was very lucky not to be in one of those helicopters. So when you get, you kind of get a bit of a second bite at the cherry in a way. Yes, and I thought, I now need to do something that that I'm passionate about, that has an impact on other people. And actually through that process, I created my own tombstone statement, which I have refined over the years. And my tombstone statement is military man turned educator to help others become better versions of themselves. So for me, everything is aligned around that. And you mentioned earlier on, doing something you're passionate about, and it doesn't feel like a chore. I think the other thing that when you follow your own passion, or what you're curious about, or doing your own thing, you can have something where it's congruent with your personal values. Yes.
That's one of the biggest stresses. Like the people who are working for banks or now working for Facebook, and it's
Yeah.
incongruent with their personal values. Mate, that creates untold amount of stress.
But of course it does. And you're in the office, and what you're being forced to do isn't in line with what you would consider ethically or morally sound, but you're conflicted then. And
Yeah.
the freedom of being able to choose what direction you take yourself and your business in. Yeah. And amazing. And how old were you, let's say, when you were coming out of the military, when you were?
Yeah, so like I was reasonably long in the tooth. I didn't join the military till I was 25 because I'd done a degree and a master's, and I pissed off around the world for a year, backpacking around South America and Asia and stuff like that. So I was reasonably late to join, and then so when I left the military, I was 33 years old. So not your typical starting entrepreneur. But I'd had a fair bit of life experience behind me at that stage.
See, and I think there's some value in that. I think that you're not too young, that you don't have money or life experience behind you, as you mentioned, and you have a bit of a head on you, like you have a bit of education from the books and from life. But you're also not too old that you have a lot of responsibilities, or you've gone too far down a path that you knew you weren't going to be happy on in 10 years' time. You're an adult stepping into a world where you can create from. And that takes confidence, and kids don't have that. So that worked out in your favor, I think. And you said then you landed in sunny Australia?
Yeah, so then we went to Australia, but the flip side of that is that hunting submarines doesn't prepare you very well for being an entrepreneur. So there's not much transferable skills going on there. So I went, and the first business I set up was relatively straightforward. I set up as a physiologist and nutritionist, working one-on-one mostly with corporate clients. But I think my first real business was the registered training organization, and that was a real eye-opener. It was a massive learning journey around marketing, around understanding the numbers, around all of the compliance that we had, because it's proper education, all of that sort of stuff. So there were lots of learning lessons, but at the same time it was exciting and it was fun.
Awesome. And it's usually around this stage in the interview that I'm like, okay, so any hard lessons that you learned and maybe people in the audience might have to learn, they can learn through. I'm not even going to pretend anymore that I'm not on the same path as you, but 10 years behind. I'm not asking for anybody else in the room. I am asking specifically to save Daniel some hardship. Because that's a business model that I'm going to be following. I want to set up a private education institution for DTW. I want to. So tell me, what were the lessons you learned the hard way? If you had your time over again, that you wouldn't have made the same mistakes, what were the hard learnings?
So probably one of the biggest one was actually a transferable lesson from the military, right? In the military, general stuff around, officer training, where they told us no battle plan ever survives first contact with the enemy, right? And so no business plan will ever survive first contact with the real world, right? I think fair. That is the most important thing to understand, because you've got this idea, and you're very passionate about your idea, and it's like, yes, we're going to do this, and it's like, have you ever seen a baby? Ever seen an ugly baby? The parent always, they're all ugly. I know, but parents think their own babies are beautiful, right? Gorgeous. So we always think that our own babies are beautiful, right? So I think that was the one thing that has really come true, is that no battle plan will survive first contact. So you've got to be able to be psychologically flexible, to be flexible in your plan. Yes, you have a plan and you do all the business planning and all that great stuff, but having the ability to be flexible and to pivot quickly, to test and learn, to feel fast. I suppose that's a lot of the stuff that they're teaching now, which they weren't teaching 10, 15 years ago, right? So I think that is really important. I think another massive lesson for me, if you're going into business with someone, is to get a shareholders agreement.
Yes.
With the exit strategies, because that first business that I started with this guy. We'd sort of become mates. We had complementary skills. We thought, yeah, we're just going to go in and we're going to nail this. We didn't create a shareholders plan, and it was all good for a year. And then he really, and he just wasn't picking it up. He wasn't doing his shift. So I actually went to him and said, mate, this isn't working. We need to work it out. I'll buy you out. And he went, nah, I don't want to be bought out. And I said, well, you buy me out. And he went, nah. And he just dug his heels in. So I actually had to go and get lawyers. And I was very lucky. They were brilliant lawyers, but I'd spent a bit of coin on it. And they said, right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go in and you're going to sack him. I'm like, I can't sack him. He's my business partner. And they said, yes, you can. So anyway, we went through these legal machinations. I went in, sat down with them and said, mate, you're sacked. And he's like, what? And I gave him a letter and I said, take that to your lawyers. And so, there was a bit of wrangling and stuff like that, but we got out of it. But I tell you what, if we had had a shareholders agreement with an exit strategy, it would have saved a lot of pain and a reasonable amount of money, right?
And you know what? And I don't know what relationship you have with that gentleman anymore, but it can also save friendships. You can. That's right. You can leave the business and have nothing personal if there's a co-founder agreement set up or a shareholder agreement set up initially. And guys, anybody on this talk with the incubator, they'll tell you all about it. But that co-founder agreement, I couldn't agree more with you, because it can get messy without.
Absolutely. And it's like a prenup, right? You don't go into it intending to separate, but it just means that if it does go awry, there's a very clear pathway, right? And so I'd set that up with other businesses that I've done, and it's actually been really helpful. I think the other thing to understand, and I learned this in a later business, the corporate one, that if you get investors, and particularly VCs, they will want to have you by the balls, right? So it's just understanding the agreement and what you're committing to if you're getting VC investment, and understanding what your own exit strategy is, and how you're going to get out if it all goes to rat shit. I think is really important, because it's great when you bring the VCs on. They're going to bring me all this experience. They've got the money. We're going to go down the road, and that's great. But they also want their pound of flesh, right? So go in with your eyes wide open.
Yeah, and it's still something for me that I'm not sure how I feel about even sharing, any sort of business. It's just like there is a quote that keeping 100% ownership of a profitable business, there's nothing like it if you can stay bootstrapping or whatever. But eventually, if you need to grow, unless you
that's right. And it's always the trade-off that at some stage it becomes probably better to own a smaller piece of a bigger pie than to own the whole piece of a small pie. But some people do it their own. They bootstrap it and they go the whole way, and that's awesome if you can. And I think that probably the other thing I learned that the hard way is that it can be a pretty lonely thing running your own business, right? And it's not when it's going well, but success doesn't have any orphans, right? But when it's not going particularly well, then it's pretty hard, and you don't have the luxury of a 9-to-5 job and coming home and switching off on the weekends and stuff like that. So, you're in your own business, you are in it 24/7, 365, right? And as long as you go in with your eyes wide open, then that's cool. And like I said, if you're doing something you're passionate about, having an impact, that's kind of offsetting it. But it's just, it's not all glory when you're in setting up your own business. Yeah.
And Paul, were you ever tempted? Because what you said there now is really valid. There's comfort in having a full-time job, and you can tell by my uniform, I have returned to a full-time employment for the time being, at least.
Yes.
How were you ever tempted? Did it ever get so tough that you're like, fuck this, is it just handier to get a job? Or, you were so qualified, and, did you ever consider tapping out and going maybe an easier route?
No, I never considered going and working for someone else, because I made a promise to myself when I left the military I was never going to work for anybody again. But you know, I was a little bit more mature. I had a little bit more money saved up. So you know, my path was a little bit different. But look, with lots of entrepreneurs, you know, if what I'm doing now stopped, I'd go and do something else. You know, we tend to be ideas people, and there's a shit heap of ideas, and sometimes the problem, and this has been a problem with me, is being focused on one thing, because I'm like a little, oh, look at that over there, that's cool. Oh, look at that over here. And so with that entrepreneurial spirit, there is the temptation to want to do this and that and the other thing, and just corralling yourself and being focused can be the hardest thing, but also the most important thing.
I get it. And just, we won't make the analogy, or like, it's similar, not the same, but you were talking about getting married and a prenup. You know, when you're committed to one person or committed to one business, life is a hell of a lot easier. Is that right, Paul?
That's right. That's it.
So,
exactly.
And tell me about this one business. What is this business that you have now, Paul? What's going on? What of all this evolution, and where has everything got you? Tell me what the business looks like right now. I tell you.
Yeah. So now it's actually simpler. It's simpler, but it's going to start to become more complex. So I sold my registered training organization. You know, that was a success story. Got a reasonable amount of coin for it. I sold my gym as well. And I decided that I just wanted to really pare back and just focus on the corporate speaking, not have staff. You know, I had 17 staff at one stage. Whoa. and that becomes the friggin' hardest thing, is managing people, right?
Yeah, I get it.
And I would say to people, you know, another bit of advice is don't so much hire on talent, hire on character. Because you can't teach character, but you can teach people skills, right?
Yeah.
And just managing people, if you end up with people, it becomes the hardest part. And particularly when you're a small business, you can't have a HR, you know, you're kind of doing it all yourself. And so that'd be that. So I decided after that, you know, I'm just going to simplify stuff. My corporate speaking business had just grown incidentally through word of mouth, because I was always doing something else. I never had the market, right? So people say to me, how'd you get into corporate speaking? I'm like, well, it's pretty non-standard, because I've never done any marketing ever in my corporate speaking. It's all been just word of mouth. And it got to the point where it was its own business. And so, you know, that's been great. For an Irishman to talk for a living, it's freaking brilliant, right?
More to do it. Like, and especially with you, Paul, like I was going to say there, I can't remember the term or the title that you gave it, but that Venn diagram where you find the passion. Ikigai. So that part that you're organically, innately, you have the skills that's speaking with you, man. It's just like you step on a stage and it's just, you're so comfortable, you're so composed, so confident, and you communicate in a manner that it's rare. There's 7.5 billion people on the planet. There's not many that can do that, Paul. So, and then also you've hit your passion, you're adding value to the world, you're getting paid for it. Ikigai.
Yeah, I know. And it's also been, and you know, I do the research, and I read neuroscience journals and stuff like that for shits and giggles. You know, it's something that I'm really, so it doesn't feel like it's a chore. So that's kind of my main stuff. And I have an app around resilience, which I run, and I've just got a couple of tech guys, and it's really simple. So it's a simplified business, but I'm just about to jump into another one, a joint venture with a bunch of guys. Having said all of that stuff,
I'm not going to pretend I wasn't disappointed. Where was the nod, boy? I would have been over to you. Let's get this going. Tell us, what's the new business? Go on, tell me if you can.
The new business is training mental health coaches. So that's something I'm particularly passionate about. I'm doing it with some guys in New Zealand who I've known for 10 years. One of them's a professor. We are very aligned. and we feel there's a real need. So we're actually going to be training mental health coaches, and then we're going to be doing some direct to consumer stuff around enhancing people's health span, which is slightly different to lifespan. Health span is you want to live to your 95, be out walking and doing heaps of stuff in your 95, and then go to bed and die in your sleep, right?
Okay. And that's so aligned. Again, there was a few people in the audience before we were talking about it, but I'll say it again. So I got introduced to Paul Taylor by a job when I was working at Fitness First in Sydney, Australia. And they had this thing called the bio-age test. And it was like, chronologically, we are what age we are. So I'm 36. When I did your bio-age test, I was 33, but it told me I might have been 24, 25 by the bio-age based on fitness.
Yeah.
And, you know, some kind of scientific, kind of clinical, or like, was it like small-based laboratory tests where I did like, you know, my lung capacity, etc., flexibility, things like that. But I just found it fascinating. And then some tests in the gym, and like the agility, strength, endurance, cardiovascular, just really impressive stuff. And it was so the simplicity of it. And I can only imagine that that is hugely advantageous for this new business venture. Like it's similar.
And so BioAge is actually still going, and it was probably my best business, but because it was relatively successful and I was like doing lots of different things, it kind of sat in the corner and didn't get much love. And then I got a global deal with Fitness First, and it still sat in the bloody corner. But like,
does that revenue still roll into you even though
look, the pandemic has had an impact because most gyms got shut. So the pandemic has killed it. So it's in hibernation. But you know, I created it 10 years ago, and it's been a massive revenue stream for me over the last 10 years. And I just created it because it was one of my clients said to me, oh, look, you give me all this information about my VO2 max and my blood pressure, cholesterol. And she was 55-year-old woman. She said, Paul, I can see that this means lots to you. You're really passionate, but it doesn't mean anything to me. And I went home and I thought about it, and I thought, Jesus, she's right. I'm giving her information that is important to me, but I'm not engaging her. And that's when I went and I created BioAge really to engage people in it. And it ended up being super. I just created it for my clients. Then I sold it to a few exercise physiologists. Then I got a deal with Fitness First in Australia. Then I got a global deal with Fitness First, and then other ones and stuff like that. So, but it just sat in the corner and didn't get much attention.
But look, perfect. And I can get why it's more relatable when you put that age on it. Because like, I'm not going to lie, I was very happy saying to a room of people there, but I was 33, but that told me I was 25. And vice versa. If I was 25 and that told me my age was 33, that would put the shits up me. I'd be like, fuck, I got to sort this.
Yes, people get the oh shit moment then.
Yeah. So that's
and the, you know, that's been a thing. And actually with me, I know that if I had been more focused, and if I was more focused now, I'd make more money. But actually for me, it's not all about the money. It's about the journey, and it's about, you know, I'm a recovering Catholic, right? I'm not religious. I think you get one shot and that's it. So I I just want to maximize my experiences, right? And I'm happy to trade off a bit of money for that.
I'm with you on that. And I said that publicly as well. I was like, I'm doing this once. I'm going to do it as well as I can. If I'm surprised, or if I'm proven wrong, and I get another go, happy fucking day. But I'm not.
That's right. It's all gravy.
I'm like, no, we have to go again. But yeah, give me the 80 to 100, but let me smash it. Awesome. And like, so currently, right? So PhD, you've after transferring to another university, continuing the studies, whilst also being an entrepreneur. Now, I find that fascinating. And again, I've alluded to why I'm doing something similar.
Yes.
What value have you got from being both an academic and an entrepreneur? Or what have you learned from one that helps with the other? Or
Yeah. Well, look, coming from academic to entrepreneur in the space that I'm in has been really useful, because I actually call myself a pracademic.
Yeah, I love that.
So I'm interested in taking all of the academic research, which is really cool in different areas, and kind of pulling it together and putting it into programs that are meaningful for it for individuals. Because everybody will have seen it. You see academics, you'll have professors who are talking about really cool cutting edge research, and they're boring as batshit, right? And they don't know how to translate it or make it meaningful for people. But I think what that has really helped my speaking business, getting the cutting edge research and saying, well, here's what it means, here's what you can do. And I just, when I'm talking, as you know, I hit people with more science than you could shake a stick at. But I also tell stories. I tell stories because that's how the brain learns, is through storytelling. And so that's been really helpful going that way from the academic world to the corporate world. Bioaids, behavior change, research, engagement, all of that, self-determination theory, bringing all of that in. And then maybe if we look at the other way, particularly with my PhD, I was particularly interested. I'm only interested in doing research which has real world applicability, what we call ecological validity, right?
Yeah.
Does this have an impact in the real world? I'm not that interested in doing that mechanistic Cartesian, break it down into its smallest components, all of that. I'm interested in...
We don't talk about dualists.
No, exactly. I'm interested in what works in the real world on real people. And so that has kind of informed my PhD and the way that I want to go. So, and it's been brilliant running my first experiment with a live military aircraft squadron in Australia. For me was pretty awesome, right? 20 years closing the circle, but actually going in and running resilience training and assessing it for serving military personnel who are under a lot of stress and pressure. We had the bushfires over here, we had the floods, then we had COVID, and these guys have been dealing with all that stuff. And so highly, highly stressed. And then being able to go in and test a resilience strategy and see that it improved mood, enhanced resilience, and reduced burnout was pretty awesome, right? Real world stuff. So that I've enjoyed from that business perspective and pulling that into the research.
Amazing. And it's so rewarding for a guy like you that, as you said,
sure.
And you can bring yourself back to that 31-year-old that would have been in the same boat, and you're paying it back and helping a younger version of yourself, essentially.
That's right. Yeah.
Super
so it's been that's been pretty cool.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying there about, that academic background you have gives you that kind of authenticity. There's nobody questioning your credentials.
That's right.
But that inert, or the innate ability that you have to stand on a stage in a room and own it in front of hundreds, or if not thousands of people, and they are waiting for every word. And that's a rare skill to have, that you have both. There's many people that are entertainers, or there are people who can go on and tell a story. And there are many professors, academics, but there's very few that can do both. So again, I get that, why that's advantageous. So what you're saying there about the research, and you're helping these people, these military people, in terms of resilience and dealing with stress and coping with tough times, and the students in the room, in the Zoom meeting. Look, we were discussing beforehand, being a student, an undergrad student during COVID times, shit crack. Being a university student in Trinity at the best times, I'm not going to say shit crack, but you have the pressures of exams, you have trying to formulate a plan for a career, the stresses that people in their young 20s or early 20s, we're all there. What advice would you have for them? And from your research or from your life experience, or if you're talking to a 21-year-old, what would you tell them in terms of resilience?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things, right? One, and I'm a big fan of Stoic philosophy. So the ancient Greek and Roman philosophers, the Stoics, and there's one big thing Epictetus said is that everything in your life is in two zones, right? Zone one is the stuff that's within your will or power, and it includes your belief systems, what you choose to be afraid of, your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions, and how you choose to react to your circumstances. Zone two is everything else: the past, the future, what people think about you, what they say about you, global pandemics, zone 2, right? And some people have said to me, what the hell would the Stoic philosophers know about a global pandemic? Well, actually, when you look at the time of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, the Antonine Plague went throughout the Roman Empire that was at least 100 times worse than COVID. Marcus Aurelius lost 5 children to the Antonine Plague, right?
Oh, wow.
And so they did know about this stuff. And you know, when we think about the Stoics, the past and the future, it's actually really important because people get mental health issues when they overly focus on the past and the future, right? So depression is a lamenting and a rumination on the past. Anxiety is this real stress and concern about the future. But in both cases, we bring either the past or the future into the present moment, right? And that's when it becomes an issue. And so the Stoics said that the key thing when you're faced with challenges is you must focus on that which you can control, zone 1, and refuse to invest your energy in that which you can't control, which is zone 2. And I think that's really important advice. With anything that's stressing you, go, fucking hell, is this zone 1 or is this zone 2? Right? Yeah. I need to really focus on zone 1, not on zone 2. So that would be some advice. The other thing I would say right now, and for your whole career of being an entrepreneur, and I know that I'm preaching to the converted when I'm talking to you, but self-care is really important. And when I say self-care, I'm not talking about fluffy bullshit of having some massage with all essential oils and that. I mean, making sure you're exercising every day, because your brain function depends heavily on it, and your resilience, it depends heavily on your exercise, right? It is the building block of resilience, or one of the building blocks of resilience. Like making sure you do not compromise on your sleep, because if your sleep is screwed, it will drive depression, anxiety, and a whole host of other things. It'll make your thinking shit, your decision-making poor. It affects what you eat the next day, how much you move the next day. So getting that right and your nutrition right, I think is really important if you want to be a peak performer. And you know, that's the stuff that I say to all the corporates, and I would say to the budding entrepreneurs and people who are doing that you need to make sure you get those 3 things squared away, right? Completely nailed. And you look for, as well as that zone 1 and zone 2, with other stuff, you just look for the silver lining in the bad shit, right? And just, you know, that whole thing. And I've got 2 mantras in my life. Number 1 is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And the other one is be a silver lining hunter, right? Nice. You just, sometimes you need to hunt for the silver lining, but it's always there. There's always a silver lining. And the one other thing that I would say to you know, guys who are at uni and stuff like that is, you don't have to have your whole fucking life mapped out in front of you, right? I did a degree in information management. It was no use to me whatsoever, right? It's only when I did my master's in sport, and then I ended up going to the military, and then I've gone and done this and that and the other thing. And there's a lot of young people that think that they need to have their lives mapped out. And I think social media doesn't help. So you see all these wanker influencers going, fucking, you can be anything you want to be, and all this horse shit. And people think that by the age of 22, if I'm not running a successful startup and an orphanage in Nepal, that I'm a failure. And you know, it's like your early 20s, they're for going out, having fun, go to university, don't take it too seriously. It's master's level and beyond. That's when you really start to worry about life. Just do enough to make sure you don't screw your life up.
Agreed. And we were joking off camera before we started. At 22 years of age, I was fighting with the University of Limerick because they were after evicting me. I was talking to management about allowing me to continue my degree. I graduated at 25, Paul. There's no rush, lads. There's no rush.
There's no rush.
That's hilarious. Yeah, but look, couldn't agree more. And that foundation of the self-care through lifestyle choices and making sure you're eating right, sleeping right, drinking right, getting enough hydration, and that you're moving. And once you've laid that foundation, everything else becomes easier. That's my experience, at least.
Yeah, so, for sure. And just because you're a uni student doesn't mean you need to eat shit food. Simple as that.
For sure. And like the habits that we develop in college, regardless, we're going to carry them into our adult lives. And whether they're positive or negative, And
Yeah.
there's a, so just be conscious of that, guys, without being like too preachy. Slow it have the crack, but like just make sure this could be a head start on getting the stuff that, as in when you're totally out and you're, and myself and Paul's stage in life, that you'll be glad to have those lifestyles and habits developed, because things just are easier at that stage. So the sooner you can get at it,
and just on that, and I agree. So I'm not preachy, you're not preachy, but we're passionate about this stuff. And so I've always had a rule. If I hang one on and give it a nudge, which I have done in my life, I have a rule that in the morning I get up and I thrash myself with a high intensity workout. And it's just a rule that I do not break, because you can't have one night and turn into another bad day, because that's often what happens with people, right? Don't write off the next day as well.
After a big session, balance those books, and then everything's sweet. And everything in moderation, including moderation. But that's
right. Exactly.
Oscar Wilde said that. He was around Trinity College before me, but I'm here now, so I love it.
I love that quote. I love it.
Love it, man. Love it. I live by it. Everything in moderation, including moderation. So when you want to go on a big one, go on a big one, but balance the books.
That's right.
Super, Paul. Super. So look, usually around this stage now, I open to the floor in terms of questions, and I'm sure we have loads. We've had some coming in already, but while people are thinking and while allow messages to come through, I'm going to ask you questions myself. So when I went to that talk in Sydney and I heard you speak, you mentioned regarding that lifestyle, but I know you went deep on the sleep habits and the sleep hygiene. So I know from speaking with people that, if they want to exercise and if they want to sign up to a class here in Trinity Sport, if they want to go run, they can. If they want to eat healthily, they might enjoy it, but they have enough knowledge to go about doing that, and they know drinking the 2 liters of water, okay, we can do that. But some of them will want to sleep, and they will choose to go to bed and sleep for 8 hours, and they can't. Any advice?
Massive advice, and it's hugely important, right? Sleep. And you speak to any world-class athlete, they'll tell you sleep is a weapon, right? And here's one, right? Because particularly, the people who are hardest to convince around lifestyle are blokes, right? We all know that's because blokes have a shield of steel, right? So here's one for the blokes. 2 nights bad sleep, your balls shrink. I kid you not, measurable changes in the size of your nuts after 2 nights bad sleep. And your testosterone resembles that of someone who's 10 years older, right? So
is that a ratio? Is it 2 nights, 2 balls, 1 night, 1 ball?
That's probably a good master's thesis for someone, actually. So quickly, the couple of things. Number one, caffeine, right? It's a brain stimulant. They give it to fighter pilots in times of war, right? So because it's a stimulant, it's got a half-life of 6 hours. That means 12 hours after that cup of coffee, you've got a quarter of it in your system. So if you're having 3-4 exposures, and it's not just coffee, it's energy drinks, diet drinks, that sort of stuff. So I say to people, try to be done caffeine by midday and no more than 3 exposures, right? The other one is alcohol. And I like a tipple, but I make sure that I have at least 3 alcohol-free days a week, because alcohol impairs REM sleep, that rapid eye movement. And it turns out that's hugely important for your mental health, right? You deprive animals or humans of REM sleep, they develop anxiety really, really quickly. Because what happens at night, your brain replays the day's events. It's deciding what to store, and it's emotional memories that get stored, but it's the only time in your life that the brain shuts down norepinephrine, which is a stress hormone. So you remember those experiences in the absence of stress hormone, and your brain stores that memory as slightly less traumatic. So what we're saying now is that every night when you're in REM sleep, your brain goes through therapy. So if you're not getting REM sleep because you're drinking alcohol, more than a couple of drinks, or you're smoking weed, which I did at university and stuff like that, but it impacts on REM sleep. So that's that. The other thing I'd say, routine. And we mess with our circadian rhythms by changing our sleep time and our wake time, right? So staying up late, watching a box set, next night you're tired, you go to bed early, then it's Thursday night, you're right, you kick the arse out of it, then you sleep in on the weekend. And it's shocking for your circadian rhythm. So try to get as much as possible. And like, don't shoot the messenger, guys, but try to go to bed at the same time every night. But even more important, get up at the same time every morning, right? And then one other bit of advice that I have is that your brain needs to wind down, right? You can't just, the worst thing that you can do is either be working and then shut your laptop and go to bed, or be watching a really engaging movie or box set, or even worse, be on social media just before you go to bed. That combination of blue light and cognitively stimulating activities massively interferes with sleep. So I say to people, right, 30 minutes before you go to bed, shut down all devices, do some breathing, do some yoga, do some meditation, pray if that's your thing, or just read a friggin' novel. When you read a novel, your brain has to go on a journey, and it's a mindful experience, right? So turn off all your devices. And the last bit is that your brain needs to know that your bedroom is a sleep sanctuary. It's where you go to sleep. And if you're lucky, you get a bit of oofty McGoofty every now and then, right? It's not for televisions, it's not for laptops, and it's not for mobile friggin' phones. And most people will have a mobile phone in their bedroom, and you're all going, then it's my alarm clock, isn't it? Buy a $10 alarm clock, you tight arse, because what we know is that if your phone is beside your bed, your brain is hypervigilant, right? Something called the default mode network. It's like the background chatter of your brain. The Dalai Lama, when he found out about this, he works with neuroscientists every year. They told him about the default mode network, and he went, you mean monkey mind, yabba, 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 right? So he calls it monkey mind, and monkey mind is our issue. People who are overthinkers, anxious people, you've got an overactive default mode network. Having your phone beside your bed is a shocker. Like, teenagers who bring a device into their bedroom sleep on average an hour less than their peers and have double the risk of mental health issues, right? So get your goddamn phone out of your room, buy a $10 alarm clock. If you can't afford it, I'll buy you one.
Nice. And I'll pay half, Paul. I'll pay half.
There you go.
I actually gave one of these talks 2 weeks ago from my bedroom, and mid-live stream, my alarm clock started going. I was like, fuck. I was like, it's 12 hours too early. I was like, I'm sorry. All right, continue with the chat.
But you had an alarm clock. That's the point.
And do you know why? Because I saw Paul Taylor speak 3 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, in Sydney. And that's why. That's why. And all those things that you just said there, I was in the back of that auditorium in the Sydney Convention Centre. I was taking notes, and it's been life-changing for me.
Boom.
2.5 years ago, guys. And if anybody else in the room wanted to start right now, in 2.5 years' time, look, I sleep at 10, up at 6, all these things, alarm clocks, phones, all devices off at 9. Look, and it was Paul Taylor. So look, there's such value in that. We do have a couple of questions that are coming in, so I'll open to the floor. So what advice do you have for early stage startups trying to get their first clients? So you said you weren't a practitioner of conventional marketing at the time, but if there's a startup and you had a startup right now, how would you go about getting your first client? Data. Yeah,
look, often, and this is what I did. I first clients, I did it for free. So basically, go out, offer your service for free if they give you feedback, right? Because I think that is really critical. And too many people, I've seen it over and over again, is that they get something they're really passionate about, and then they just go all out on it. That's that whole test and learn. Just go get some real life, ecologically valid feedback from live people. Just do it for free, suck up the costs, but make sure you really get quality feedback from them. That's what I would say. And then, test and learn, tweak, blah, blah, blah. That sort of stuff, I think is really, really important. And because your first people, if they understand that, hey, I'm giving you this for free because I like some feedback, they're much more tolerant of little bugs and flaws and that sort of stuff. So you can refine that process with those guys and get some really quality feedback around it, right? And doing it for free, and then try and get local paper to do something on it, right? Get a little bit of local exposure, that sort of stuff. Well, actually, that's a bit old hat these days. Social media is kind of the way. So get yourself a social media whiz, probably.
Nice. And look, solid advice there. And especially that, like, you got it. You do this stuff for free at the start. Eventually someone will pay you and you'll be good by the time they pay you from the experience.
That's right.
Like that.
Exactly.
So we had a question coming in earlier that I saw, and I don't know whether it was at me or at you, because you were mentioning at the time that you weren't too good at it, but you may have learned. How would you recommend to others to focus on particular tasks? Is there anything that now you've developed since your self-awareness told you that you weren't really good at that focusing on one thing at a time? Is there anything that you do now that's helped?
Yeah. So what I do now, like, is every day, and I'm still a pen and paper guy, right? I write down my list, but the key thing, there you go, eat the frog. Eat the frog.
We need context, Paul. People are going to be eating frogs tonight. These are college students. Give us context.
I would say, so eating the frog is about doing the really hard, important thing, right? Because what we tend to do is that we do our list, and then because particularly when you get a lot of shit going on, your brain, it doesn't like to do hard stuff. So what it'll do is it'll want to do the easy stuff, right? And work-like activities such as emails, clearing your email box, and that stuff. And we tend to put off the hard stuff to later. So a great bit of advice is get up in the morning and look, ideally, if you can do this before you turn on your devices, before you switch on your email and get other people's issues into your life, is do the 3 most important things first, right? Do it early in the morning when you got good energy. I like getting up early in the morning before the family and actually doing some deep work first.
Nice.
We get up and eat the frog first. So that motto is just eat the frog, eat the goddamn frog.
Love it. And you mentioned deep work there. The book Cal Newport's Deep Work has changed my life, you know, and good putting those 2-hour blocks and focusing on one particular task at a time. And
look, the other thing that I would say is do short little bursts, like the Pomodoro technique is really awesome. And I don't use it consistently, but I'll use it occasionally when I remember. But what I will do is that at every half an hour or whatever, I just get up and I've got kettlebells and club bells sitting around me and just do a couple of minutes of vigorous activity, right? Because it's just, you get blood flow and oxygen back to the brain. The worst thing you can do is sit on your arse for prolonged periods of time. You just got to do a bit of deep work, get up, do some exercise, drink some water, you know, do something interesting for 5 minutes, then get back into your work.
Solid advice. And the busier you are, the more useful that kind of Pomodoro technique is.
Oh, absolutely.
I find that now it's like if I get a 2-hour window, I will do my PhD stuff with the world out, and then I can continue with the more distracting work that we do time to time. So look,
part of the issue, that Daniel, is that there's so much more distractions than there were when I was going through uni and stuff like that. So and nobody's got the rule book around how to do it, but it makes life friggin' difficult, and all the social media, you know, nobody knows this stuff. So, but it's really about trying to minimize those distractions, particularly when you got an important stuff on, and when you're eating the frog, just turn all that shit off. The world is not going to stop if you don't check Instagram for 2 hours.
Oh, mate, all about it. And that 2 hours will be the most productive part of your day. You'll be so proud. You hit the pillow that evening, it's like, I got that done. Whereas if you're looking at every single distraction and responding to every single WhatsApp, look, there's no way you're going to get that one done. Another question, Paul, your qualifications and education in neuroscience, has that helped you in the business world? In whether, you know, how has that neuroscience affected your entrepreneurial journey in a positive way?
Look, it massively helped my corporate speaking, particularly, right? Because people are very interested in their own brains, right? When you're talking you take them on a journey through their own brain, then it's really interesting. But for me, in my personal life and as an entrepreneur, understanding how the brain works and understanding that brain cognitive performance is really important. Understanding how the brain reacts to stress, all of that. And that's where, you know, where we got back to where we talked about earlier, the exercise, the sleep hygiene, the nutrition, absolutely fundamental building blocks. And look, I can now say unequivocally, and without any judgment whatsoever, that if people are not currently engaging in regular physical activity, at least some of which is vigorous, there's not a snowball's chance in hell that your brain is functioning optimally. No chance, just none.
Awesome. I love hearing that, Paul. And I have people in here coming into Trinity Sport every single day. And when it comes to exam time, you don't see them. Or when the crunch really hits with assignments, they're not exercising anymore. I was like, it breaks my heart because I'm like, this is when you need it the most.
And guys, just on this, so my little girl's 15, she's getting really into her study, and so saying when she's studying or doing school, early morning, just a short bit of exercise, but particularly when she's studying, I get her to do a period of study and then do a couple of minutes of high intensity exercise. Like my 15-year-old girl throws kettlebells around, which is really quite cool. But what we know is that adrenaline encodes memory, right? So if you do a block of study and then you do a short burst of exercise or even some Wim Hof breathing type stuff, right? That controlled hyperventilation, both of those increase adrenaline, and adrenaline encodes memory, right? So you are much more likely to remember stuff if you exercise just at the end of it. And it doesn't have to be long, right? And the other little tip that I would give people is when you're studying coming up to exams, get a little oil burner. And so I've worked with quite a lot of I do karate now, and I work with some of the elite karate athletes, and one of the guys who went to the Olympics, and the smell and how smell has a massive impact on your brain, right? So if you think about it, you'll walk down the street, you'll smell something, and you'll get a memory of when you were a kid, right? That just pops up. Because smell has a huge impact on learning and memory. And there's probably good evolutionary reasons for that. But so when my little girl's studying is I get her to burn a particular oil as she's studying. So she's smelling it. And then when she sleeps at night, she burns the same oil. Because when you're sleeping, that is getting into the brain and encoding the memory, right? And it's a pretty cool little trick.
Lads, this is fucking gold dust. Like, this is like magic stuff, you know, and you're gonna have such a competitive advantage. Just like, I wish I was Paul Taylor's daughter. That'd make life really easier. Lads, it's gold. It's gold. Take this stuff, write it down. This whole meeting has been recorded. I am going to share this with Paul's permission everywhere that I can, because it makes your life easier. And I know, and I can say hand on my heart, unequivocally, I can say that my life has improved in the 2.5 years since listening to Paul Taylor's advice. So if there's anybody else in the room that wants the same sort of effect on their lives, really go deep on paying attention to what was said this evening. And Paul, look, from me only personally, I'm so, I don't know what the word is. I feel privileged, honored that you're here, grateful. There's a lot of appreciation. You came out of your way. The guy in Melbourne right now, it's like, you know, this guy got logged in at 5:30 a.m. to be here with us today. So if this was a full auditorium now, I'd have everybody standing and giving applause. But for me and representing the society, I just want to say thanks from the bottom of my heart, Paul. And I hope to see you again physically. But regardless, we're going to have more chats like this because it's at a different level, Paul. You're an anomaly and you're amazing. So thanks for that.
Right, mate. Thank you, mate. And it's all right. I will get that balance, all that lovely stuff you said about me. I'll go into my room later on. My wife will go, pick up your fucking socks, bring me back down to earth.
And she's fucking right. She's fucking right. Right, Paul. I'll leave you go. It's still early. You can enjoy your breakfast, barbecue, whatever you do out there. And look, stay safe, stay healthy, and look, hopefully I'll see you again soon.
Yeah, I'll send you through a couple of links for people for if they want some further reading and stuff like that, and a link to my podcast and some stuff on my website. There's an 8-minute workout that people can do that's all body weight and stuff like that. So I'll flick you through some links and you can share it with the guys.
Perfect, will do. And even just before we finish, if they want to contact you directly, is it the website? What's the best place to find you?
It's probably LinkedIn. Would be the best place to contact me directly, or on the website, Mind Body Brain Performance. And so I'll send through those links, people can more than happy to have a chat.
And we'll share it everywhere. And guys, if there's one thing to be taken from the very start of this talk, Paul Taylor told me, if you don't ask, you don't get. I asked, he's here. Somebody else asks you a question, you will get a response.
And hey, I actually, on that point, just before we go, when I finished with the military, I was doing resettlement, right? And as an officer, you get to go and see a retired 4-ring captain who's got lots of tentacles, right? And so we sat down and he's saying, so, you know, what are you thinking? And I said, well, I'm an exercise physiologist. I just finished my master's in nutrition. I've done, as part of my resettlement, at American College of Sports Medicine course. I'm moving to Australia next month, and I'm setting up as a nutritionist and a neuroscientist, an exercise physiologist. And he went, he says, I don't think my tentacles extend into the fitness world in Melbourne, but he says, I will give you one bit of advice. He says, when you go there, he says, find out who's who in the zoo in your area and just go and talk to them. And if they do let you in to talk to them, at the end, say to them, thank you very much. Who should I talk to next? And it was gold advice, right?
Solid.
Who should I talk to next? Because people, once they've talked to you, they'll open the door for you, right? And you ask that question, who should I talk to next? Can you introduce me to anybody? And if you don't ask, you don't get.
And I'm going to ruin the surprise now for you, Paul, because I might as well tell you about the giggle in the room. You're going to get an email from me this evening. Who should I talk to next? You know.
Awesome.
Paul, thank you so much, mate. Have a great day. I really appreciate all the effort, and it was awesome. And people are going to get gold over this interview, and I'm going to share it everywhere I can. So thanks a million again, and hopefully we'll see each other again soon.